The psychology of the bullied child. When does the pain finally end? Bullying doesn't just happen to you. It happens inside you, shaping the way you breathe, speak, and shrink yourself in rooms that feel too loud. You learned early that being visible was dangerous, that attention was a currency you couldn't afford. So you became small, quiet, hyper-aware of every shift in the atmosphere. You didn't understand that the cruelty wasn't about you. A child simply absorbs the impact without context, without defense, without anyone explaining why some hearts choose violence. And so the pain settled into your nervous system like a second skin. It taught you to anticipate harm before it arrived, to read faces faster than adults read newspapers. That level of vigilance wasn't normal, but it was necessary. You adapted brilliantly, even though the cost was high. You survived by becoming someone who expected little from others and everything from yourself. But survival strategies are not meant to last a lifetime. This is where your healing begins. Understanding that what happened wasn't a reflection of your worth, but a reflection of someone else's brokenness. You were just a child. You deserve protection, not humiliation. Children don't understand chronic stress. They only understand danger. When the bullying didn't stop, your body learned that the world was not safe, and it stored that lesson everywhere. In your shoulders, in your jaw, in the way your heartbeat speeds up at the smallest sign of rejection. Even now, as an adult, your nervous system still scans for threats that are no longer there. A tone of voice, a sudden laugh, a whispered conversation behind you. The past taught you to interpret all of it as possible danger. This is why you overthink everything you say, why you replay conversations at night, why you apologize for things that didn't require an apology. It's not low confidence. It's trauma wearing the mask of humility. You didn't become anxious because you're weak. You became vigilant because you were once unprotected. That matters. That explains so much. The healing begins when you stop blaming yourself for responses that were once life-saving. Hypervigilance isn't a flaw. It's a wound asking to be understood. One of the most painful psychological impacts of bullying is the belief that the cruelty was logical, that it happened because of you. Children don't question the behavior of others. They question themselves. You may have internalized the message that you were strange, wrong, annoying, too much, or not enough. And once those narratives settle in, they follow you for years, echoing in relationships, workplaces, and friendships. The bullying becomes a mirror that distorts your self-perception. You start expecting rejection, bracing for it, preparing for the moment someone finally sees the flaws you were taught to believe in. But those beliefs were never yours. They were planted. Someone else's cruelty became your inner voice, a voice that was never meant to live inside you. Healing means reclaiming that voice, slowly, gently, one truth at a time. You were never the problem. You were a child trying to belong, trying to breathe, trying to exist in a world that didn't know how to meet you with kindness. Shame is not a feeling you're born with. It's one that is handed to you, often violently. Bullying forces a child to believe that simply existing is a mistake, that being themselves is somehow unacceptable. This shame becomes a lens through which you interpret everything. The way people look at you, the way you take up space, the way you speak. You begin to move through life apologizing for your presence. Shame makes you shrink even when no one is watching. It whispers that silence keeps you safe, that invisibility is protection. But the truth is that shame is a prison disguised as safety. As an adult, you might still feel that inner tightening whenever you try to express a need, set a boundary, or simply take up emotional space. That's not personality, that's conditioning. Healing begins when you recognize that the shame never belonged to you. It was placed on a child who trusted too deeply and was hurt too early. Trauma is not stored in memories alone. It lives in the body. Your body remembers the hallways where you walked faster, the classrooms where your stomach tightened, the moments when laughter around you felt like knives. Even today, the body reacts before you can explain why. A sudden tension, a racing pulse, a collapse in your chest. The past speaks through the nervous system long before it reaches consciousness. Bullying trains a child's body to stay small, to avoid eye contact, to minimize movement. These responses become muscle memory long after the danger is gone. This is why certain people still intimidate you, or why you freeze during conflict, or why compliments feel suspicious. Your body hasn't forgotten what unkindness taught it. The healing is slow, but real. Learning to notice your body's signals, to breathe through them, to show your nervous system that the danger is no longer here. When no one steps in to protect a bullied child, the child forms a simple, heartbreaking conclusion. I can only rely on myself. This belief becomes hyper-independence, the need to handle everything alone, to never burden anyone, to never need help. It looks strong from the outside, but inside, it's a desperate attempt to stay safe. You learned early that vulnerability attracts danger, that asking for support leads to disappointment, and that showing emotions becomes ammunition. So you built walls high enough to keep everyone out, even the ones who care. As an adult, you may find yourself exhausted, overfunctioning, emotionally isolated, terrified of being truly seen. Not because you don't want connection, but because connection once hurt you. Healing begins when you understand that needing others is not weakness. It is human, and you were denied that safety far too early. When conflict once meant humiliation, your adult brain learns to treat even small disagreements as danger. A raised voice, a tense silence, or a disappointed expression can feel like a doorway back to childhood. You don't fear the argument itself. You fear what arguments used to become: the mockery, the ganging up, the loss of safety. Your body reacts as if the old attackers are still in the room. So you avoid confrontation. You become overly agreeable. You let things slide that hurt you deeply, because protecting your peace feels more important than defending your truth. Inside, though, you ache for the courage to speak up, to be heard, to exist without fear. But every time you try, that old childhood memory whispers, it's safer to stay quiet. Healing begins when you realize that conflict today is not the same as conflict then. You can learn to speak without trembling. You can learn that not everyone wants to hurt you. Bullying isolates a child, not just physically, but emotionally. You begin to believe that you are fundamentally alone, fundamentally different, fundamentally unlovable. Even now, surrounded by people, you may still feel a subtle distance inside you, a sense that others don't truly see you, or wouldn't understand if they tried. Loneliness becomes a habit, not a circumstance. This quiet ache can make you either cling too tightly to people or push them away too soon. Both patterns are trauma expressing itself through attachment. You might call yourself independent or reserved, but beneath that is a child who once waited for someone to sit beside them, to defend them, to say, "You don't deserve this." Healing begins when you let connection in slowly, with people who show consistency instead of cruelty. You deserve companionship that doesn't hurt. Many bullied children respond by shape-shifting, altering their personality depending on the environment, adjusting themselves to avoid judgment or conflict. You learn to read people's moods like weather patterns, becoming exactly what the situation required. Funny when needed, quiet when safer, invisible when threatened. This mask helped you survive, but as an adult, it can leave you feeling lost. You might not know who you are without the performance, without the constant scanning for approval or danger. It's not that you're fake, it's that you were conditioned to adapt as a form of self-protection. You were never given permission to be your full, messy, authentic self. Healing begins with reclaiming your identity piece by piece, your preferences, your opinions, your voice. You don't need to impress anyone to be safe anymore. Rejection hits you harder than it hits most people. not because you're sensitive, Dime, but porxu corpo limbra. Each no, each silence, each moment of being ignored feels like a replay of old wounds that never fully healed. When you were bullied, rejection wasn't just emotional, it was social survival. Being excluded meant vulnerability. Being singled out meant danger. So now, even small rejections feel huge. They activate your nervous system, your fear of abandonment, your belief that you're never quite enough. It's not that you overreact. It's that the child inside you still thinks rejection equals harm. And back then, it did. Healing begins when you learn to tell your younger self, this pain is old, this moment is new. You are safe now. When you grow up surrounded by cruelty, kindness feels suspicious. Compliments feel like traps. Nice people feel unpredictable because the kindness you knew was inconsistent, quickly turning into mockery. So when someone treats you well today, your first instinct isn't relief, it's doubt. You wait for the switch, the betrayal, the laugh at your expense. This isn't negativity. This is protective logic formed in childhood. Your brain learned that kindness could become weaponized, and that trust was a vulnerability you couldn't afford. As an adult, this makes intimacy confusing. You crave closeness, but pull away the moment it feels real. You want to believe in people, but the past tells you not to. Healing begins when you let kindness land slowly, cautiously. You don't have to trust instantly. You just have to let yourself notice when someone's actions are consistent. Many people who suffered bullying grow up with an unconscious mission. I will prove them wrong. You may work harder than everyone, push yourself past exhaustion, or set impossible standards, not because you love achievement, but because a wounded child still thinks worth must be earned. You learned early that you had to justify your existence, defend it, validate it. So you became disciplined, perfectionistic, self-critical traits society applauds, but that secretly come from pain. You're not chasing success. You're chasing safety. You're chasing the moment when someone finally says, you're enough. Healing begins when you realize you don't need to prove anything anymore. The child who was bullied didn't need to be better. They needed to be protected. Bullying teaches a child one devastating lesson. The world is not safe. Even long after the bullying ends, that belief remains wired into your emotional reflexes. You move through life bracing for something to go wrong, for someone to turn on you, laugh at you, expose you. Safety becomes something you chase, not something you feel. You analyze every room, every conversation, every silence. Not because you're dramatic, but because your body remembers being caught off guard. Even in peaceful moments, you may feel a low hum of tension inside you, as if safety is fragile and temporary. That's not anxiety, it's an injury. Healing begins when you let yourself experience pockets of safety without running from them. Slowly, your nervous system learns that calm is not a trap, it's home. The healing of bullying is not about forgetting. It's about reparenting. It's about giving your younger self the comfort, validation, and protection they never received. You do this by speaking to yourself with gentleness, replacing the voice of the bully with a voice of compassion, by resting when you're tired, by saying no when something hurts, by choosing people who choose you back. Reparenting is the moment you realize you can be the adult you always needed, one who listens, one who protects, one who doesn't minimize your pain. You're not weak for needing reassurance, softness, or encouragement. You're repairing years of emotional neglect and cruelty that were never your responsibility to carry. Healing begins when you stop asking, why wasn't I enough? And start saying, I deserved better, and I will give myself better now. The suffering ends the moment you stop carrying stories that were never yours. The moment you see that what happened to you was an injury, not a definition. Pain fades when you stop blaming yourself for the cruelty you endured and start grieving the child who went through it alone. Healing is not forgetting, It's understanding that the danger is over. The suffering ends in pieces. In the day you speak up, in the day you set a boundary, in the day you look at yourself with softness instead of suspicion. It ends when you finally feel the truth land in your chest. I was hurt, but I am healing. I was alone, but I am not alone anymore. And now, you get to write the rest of the story, one where you are no longer the child being wounded, but the adult gently protecting the child within you. When did you first realize that the bullying you suffered was still shaping your adult life today? Leave your story in the comments, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications.